Hello and welcome to Atlas Forge. This is Andy Morbitzer, CEO Atlas Forge, the educational platform. And here we speak of all things financial, whether it be taxes, tax mitigation, products that help you mitigate and hedge and save around the world. And I'll be honest, gold is that it's biblical money. It's been around and been used for trade and barter and hedge and security for, well, millennia, since biblical days. And as things become more and more volatile around the world, and you see it in places like Spain and Greece and Venezuela and Iceland and India, understand that governments that are in need of cash will turn to destructive solutions. Typically, they start printing money. And as you know, the world is 300, and let me repeat, 300 trillion, that's with a T, trillion dollars in debt and growing. And that is at the lowest interest rates really in history. So a lot of cheap money, a lot of free money has really fueled this debt crisis around the world. And now more than ever, you need to hedge. Everything is cyclical. Everything has an upside and a downside. You've heard the bull walks up the stairs and the bear jumps out the window. Well, right now, when you look at macroeconomics around the world, I highly recommend that you acquire some physical gold for your personal possession, because that's what the world dictates. I mean, we're seeing crashes on the S&P, the NASDAQ, the Shanghai. These all-time highs are now starting to come down the other side of the mountain. And you can throw cryptocurrency in there with Bitcoin as well. Understand the strategies and the products that we implement within Atlas Forge are shock absorbers. In typical investment vehicles that are highly manipulated and highly overvalued, i.e. the stock market, it just makes good and prudent sense to secure some silver and gold. And if you have an IRA or a self-directed IRA, in that particular case, a lot of the rules for those vehicles will only allow you to get a government issued gold or silver, because if you've been following along in the teachings, understand there's a difference between a government issued gold and silver coin as versus a privately owned and minted gold or silver bullion. One is seizable under law, and one you are the bearer but not the owner. And that's critical that you understand that not all gold and not all silver is created equal. There's a reason why there's a $50 face value on an ounce of gold that is a government issued currency, because it can be seized for that amount. And they've done it 3 times in the last 100 years. So as things get more volatile and more out of whack, which it will, money printing here in the United States, we've printed over 11 to $12 trillion over the last 8 or 9 years with the intent of trying to stimulate the economy. And well, as far as I can tell, I don't see any new schools, any new bridges, brand new roads, any reducing of deficit. So I don't know where the 11 or 12 trillion dollars went, except that it went to bail out banks, central banks, and then it's really been used to fuel the current all-time highs on the stock markets, highest price to earnings ratios. The value in paper assets is very, very expensive with very, very high risk. So as governments become more desperate, they've already done the money printing, higher taxes are surely to follow. Just last year here in the United States, they added 80,000 pages of new rules and regulations just pertaining to income. So we've done the money printing, higher taxes are on the way. And then we see on every turn that there's more regulations, more rules, more fees. Banks are charging astronomical amounts of money for overcharge protection, anything like that. The banks are getting rich. They're setting all-time revenue on a quarterly basis, meaning their profits are absolutely incredible, but yet they can't pay an interest rate for the average folks like you and me. That's why I bank in Singapore. We actually get paid an interest on our fiat money. When we do deal in the world of fiat currency, which sometimes it's a necessity, you might as well have your fiat currency in the safest place in banking. And to me, that's Singapore, simply because they've got the best rules and regulations, but they're in my favor. They pay an interest, And they're highly capitalized, meaning they are not in debt. They're not insolvent, meaning bankrupt. Singapore has one of the strongest banking communities and rules in the world. And I believe Singapore will be the next Wall Street of the world, the financial hub of the Pacific Rim, because they have good principles and practices with fiscal policies of money, whereas the Western world is, well, quite honestly, in debt up to its eyeballs. So that's usually the progression: money printing, higher taxes, and then regulation. And as these governments become more desperate, their policies and their actions become more destructive. Remember, desperate people do desperate things in desperate times. And usually you, the middle class, you and me, and the other 7 billion people on the planet are the ones that bear the brunt of taxation, the rules, the regulation. So know that taxes, you've heard the old saying, two things for sure in life, and that's death and taxes. Well, your taxes are about to increase. Interest rates are about to increase. They're already starting to do it. So you're going to have a great default and a great shortage in pensions, 401ks, all these different assets that are just drearfully undervalued. They made a promise that they can't keep. So as they become increasingly desperate, they have rules like capital controls. And a capital control is really rules set forth that limit your ability or encumbrance your ability to move as a person across borders. Maybe you want to expatriate. Maybe you want to invest overseas. Maybe you want to carry gold or silver or cash across the border. Well, as these governments become more and more desperate, that's exactly what happens. They limit the amount of money that you can take out of an ATM machine. Most recently in Europe, I think it was Spain, maybe it was Greece. Well, they had people lined up, hundreds long at the ATM machine to get their capital control money, meaning they set a limit on how much cash that you could get out of an ATM on a daily basis, and that was at 30 euros. So I couldn't live on 30 euros a day. So it would completely disrupt my quality of life and my standard of living. So understand, right now, more than any time that I've been alive on this planet, 53 years, we've lived a great life up until about the last decade, where the world's just gone crazy on debt. This free money comes at a cost, and you're about to see the repercussions or the effects of what free money does on free enterprise. And as they become desperate, capital controls is just the beginning of it. Price controls, you're going to start seeing inflation in a big way. And you're probably already noticing it at the store where, that bag of chips that's still the same size, it just has less product in it. And that's inflation. The best way in layman's term that I can explain inflation, that they try to trick you. It's the same size package. It's the same price, but the contents have been reduced by 30, 40, 50%. Because they don't want to raise the prices, because then you don't buy it. But if the price seems consistent, then they just reduce the amount of the product in the bag. It's very devious, but it's at work at all times. Inflation is the killer for savers. You actually get penalized for saving these days and not spending. That's what got us into this mess as it is they think to solve a problem that you throw money at it. All that does is exacerbate the problem and kick the can down the road. We need to become savers. We need to become producers and manufacturers and have a great base. We become consumers. It's all about consumption. That model doesn't work. This great experiment of the Federal Reserve, since its inception in 1913, this big Ponzi scheme they call the Federal Reserve is just nonsense. It's been an experiment that has failed. Now, it's reigned for 105 years. They've been able to manipulate things quite nicely. But even now, here we are, 21st century, costs are out of control. They're running out of weapons to finally come clean on gold and silver and the price manipulation that goes with it. So as they become more desperate, know that you're going to bear the brunt of their indiscretions. I mean, these central banks are out of control. And it all comes down to lending money to people who don't qualify, who can't afford it. It's easy to figure out. We're teaching our kids the wrong principles. The old adage of go to work, save, buy a house, participate in, the corporate pension plan or some kind of a government sponsored entitlement. These don't work. We're rewarding people for non-participation. They make more money on government handouts than they do actually going to work. And it's debt. It's all a burden placed on we, the middle class, and it doesn't end well for us. So it's imperative that you have a plan B and you diversify. So now we've talked about people control. Just like you're seeing official currency devaluations. I mean, that's what the trade wars are about right now. China's trying to reduce its purchasing power and its currency as well as the United States because macroeconomically it makes sense. But know that the trade wars that we're in right now are nothing more than just a tax. At the end of the day, you and me in the middle class, we're the ones paying for all this. So tariffs are ineffective. All that it does, it's a fancy way to increase tax. So official currency devaluations, you're seeing it all around the world, most notably right down there in Venezuela, where they've printed so much money and devalued their currency so much. That's why Bitcoin was so popular there for about 6 months. These folks, the banks were closed, the ATMs were closed. They didn't have any physical cash, tucked away at their house like they should have. So they were all just stuck with nothing to do. And now the rise of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, it's become more and more positive because when it's the money of the people, you've got to remember, he who owns the money owns the people. He who controls the money controls the people. So people controls are very prevalent here in the 21st century. Wealth confiscations, you're seeing it throughout the world where these governments and these entities will just go into a pension and reduce or revalue it and thus stealing your money. Retirement accounts, nationalizations. Retirement accounts are huge. See, understand pensions were based on a pro forma back long ago when you had a whole bunch of people participating in pensions. Same thing with Social Security. Social Security was based off of a percentage of 7.5%, and they had millions and millions of people participating in it during the baby boom. And really what it is, it's a Ponzi scheme. And they were guaranteeing, 7.5%, invest with us for the long haul, and we'll take care of you during your retirement age. Well, unfortunately, the return on them doesn't even keep up with inflation. Remember, I always say there's 4 types of money. Money you spend on a daily basis. I currently choose to bank in fiat world in Singapore for all the reasons I mentioned earlier. And then you have money that is a long-term investment. And then you have money that outpaces inflation. And that's the big one. Because what's happening is all these people that went to work, didn't live a lavish lifestyle, saved throughout the whole year, the promises that were made to them are now no longer viable. They're going to have to renege on their commitment of these social programs, Social Security, Medicare, pensions, because in actuality, the pro forma doesn't work because it started off with the wrong basis points. They were built all their algorithms and all their performance off 7.5%. Times were great. The average return on the stock market was 10%. So they used 7.5%. Fast forward 50 years. Why, of course, inflation is so rampant that the value of $1, and think of it more for people who are retired that are living on fixed income. Let's say your pension or your Social Security pays you $1,500 a month. Well, that sounds great if it was 1980, because remember, 1980 is about the income level and it's remained stagnant for 30 years. So our production's gone up, but our base pay and our wages have remained constant. So whenever you have this, you're putting all these fiat dollars into these savings and retirement programs where the return doesn't even cover the devaluation through inflation of the capital. So it's a scary, scary scenario for many people that are in the act of retiring, already retiring, somebody on a fixed income, because your purchasing power has been declined so much that $1,500 doesn't get you around the corner. No, let's pay for, your house, your car, your insurance, your food, and all these expenses because products, goods, and services have skyrocketed in cost. I really feel bad, and I don't want to be one of those people that I don't want to be 70 years old being a greeter at Walmart. So I've taken steps around the world to protect myself, to have a plan B, to diversify. And this is hugely important right now because the worse the government's fiscal health, the more disruptive the policies become. Now, some people laugh at this, but the highest tax rate ever after the Civil War was 92%. Think about that. Think about giving 92% of your money that you earn in tax. It's happened before. And there's been multiple times where it's half, 60%, 70%. It's nothing new. It's no secret that political risk is snowballing, and that's what you're seeing around the world. South America, Venezuela, certain parts of India, the UK, and it's especially important in the US and Europe because there's so much welfare, so many entitlements that have been promised that there's no way that these governments will be able to commit or perform what was the expectation set when they first were formed. So it doesn't matter which parties anywhere in the world. It's the same old book, just another page. So you've got to look at it as diversification is not only different products, but think of diversification as different geographic locations, because your government's only as powerful as the assets you have in its system, whether it be Social Security, a 401k. It's very difficult for any government to cross national lines and seize an asset that's not of their sovereignty. So no matter where you live, international diversification can greatly reduce the threat your home government poses to your personal and financial well-being. And that's a very true statement. So you need to know and understand the benefits of diversifying your portfolio. If you put all your eggs in one basket, and that's true whether it's just a 401k, if it's just gold, if it's just silver, if it's just one bank account, whether it's one country, you need to understand that what's going to protect you and allow you to thrive and profit from what will be the most challenging decade that we've seen in our lifetimes. The next 10 years and the next 20 years are going to be some financially stressful challenges for a lot of folks. You're going to see more and more people in the West move from middle class to poverty. It's just sure economics. It's math. It's an absolute, because wages are not increasing with production. The devaluation of the dollar, every time somebody prints more and more money, it devalues yours a little bit more. It makes it a little bit less valuable. There's the old saying, during the Depression, a guy had a wheelbarrow full of money and he ran to the cops and he said, a thief just stole some of my property. And the police said, well, what'd they sell? He said, well, I had a wheelbarrow full of cash. And they said, well, did they steal the cash? He goes, no, I didn't want the cash. I wanted the wheelbarrow. That's how worthless his cash was. Zimbabwe, you see those $1 trillion notes. You see it all throughout history that desperate governments do desperate things and they start with printing money. And it's very destructive to our standard of living. So we believe that hedging, having a store of value, being able to have assets abroad that protect you personally, protect you financially, protect you from overzealous governments and seizures, that you have gold and silver, strategic metals, things of value that are internationally recognized that can be liquidated. So never have your eggs in one basket. So that's true for diversification within assets, but also countries. So keep in mind that political risk is very dangerous. Ask anybody in all these countries that are just, breaking at the seams, and you could lose everything. And a lot of people have. Currency is not a safe haven at all. I think of it this way, and I've said this for probably 5 or 10 years now, the people that have followed me and my teachings, that what people lack is financial insurance. I started buying gold back in 2002. And since that time, my gold holdings and my silver holdings have doubled in value. Now, have I ever had the need to liquidate that? No, because I have other diversification assets around the world. But think of it this way. The easiest, fastest way that you can diversify is to have gold stored in a third-party country. We use Germany, New Zealand, I believe, and then I think we have something here in the States as well. But my point is, insurance, you insure every aspect of your life. Medical insurance, it's mandatory. Life insurance, it's optional. They want to make the money while you're alive. They don't really care because you're no longer a living, breathing tax entity. So they don't care if you really have life insurance. That's not a law because at that point, you're not generating any more revenue for governments. So they really don't care whether you die or you don't. And I hate to sound cruel and brash, but that's the reality of it. You have fire insurance, car insurance. Now, this isn't for you. This is for the lender. You have mortgage insurance. Did you know that during the housing bust, all the houses that went bankrupt, that the lenders actually made money through insurance? And I won't get into it, but know that the only people that lost there were us, the middle class. The banks were covered through federal insurances and such. My point is this: you insure every aspect of your life, but 99.9% of the people, they do not give a second thought to financial insurance. And it should be the number one thing that you insure. And let's look at it from a totally different way and said, oh, Andy, you're being paranoid. Everything's great. Well, if you're foolish enough to believe that, then keep going down the path you're going down. And when you experience enough pain, you will finally come to the reality that life's a very complicated place. And let's say I'm wrong and nothing happens. The gold that I bought 2002, I still have it. It's still a hedge, still holding its value. And in fact, it's doubled in value since then. So even my insurance, I'm making money on. And it's not intended to be an investment whatsoever. It's intended to be a hedge against very, very loose and manipulative financial bureaucracy, fiat currencies. It's all a game. The most significant things that have happened in the United States, and I usually use the United States as the de facto country simply because the United States controls most of the money in the world, about 92% of it. And everything is attached to, paired to, and or flows through what they call the SWIFT system. So when I talk about things from the perspective of the United States, know as the US dollar goes, so too goes all other fiat currencies. And now people like to challenge me on that, but it's true. All you got to do is do a little research and you'll see. And quite honestly, the last four countries that the United States went to war over was people who didn't participate in what they call this SWIFT system. This SWIFT system is really the checks and balances and big government's ability to, monitor you, regulate you, control you, encumbrance you. And it's very serious stuff, and I take it very personal. It's damn near impossible to be successful when all the cards are stacked against you, whether it's inflation, the central banks, the rules, the regulations, the fees, devaluation of the money, printing of money, elected officials spending like we can afford it, and it's on personal agenda. I mean, like I said before, we printed trillions and trillions of dollars. I don't see any new schools, new infrastructure, any reduction of debt. All that we did was add more debt and made our currency even less valuable. So it's a joke. What this offers, gold, silver, strategic, it gives you peace of mind. When and if, and it will, I don't know when, but it will, this will be the lifeboat, the life preserver, the life jacket, the little donut you throw in the water that's going to save your life financially. It's all about maintaining that standard of living. International diversification is the ultimate insurance policy. That's why we do banking in Singapore. We have strategic metals in Germany. We have 3 different international entities in multiple countries. Now, does everybody need this? No. We're just at a point in our lives where we're very diverse, we're very innovative, we're very forward thinking, and we're very proactive as to the things that would change this beautiful life that we're enjoying. If you want to continue, I'd advise you need to do the same. Gold is really on a comeback. If you listened in last week, I made some very compelling points as to why I currently buy silver versus gold. Gold and silver, it really frees you from absolute dependence on one government. If you only have one bank account, if you only have assets in one country, if you only have one stock, bond, or something in your 401k in the same family of paper assets, let's say you got a large cap, mid cap, and a small cap all within the same family of investment paper, then you're not diversified at all. Understands that it becomes very difficult for bureaucrats to seize your money or control you if your assets are abroad. Because the biggest hurdle most times, if it's a fiat, well, they can just close you down with a tap of a button on a computer screen. They limit what you can take physically. So why have plan B and have it outside the country already, where you own, maintain, and control it? And every product that we provide as a way of financial security through Atlas Forge is predicated upon that fact. There's certain products we have, gold and silver for hedging. We have strategic metals, diamonds, rare whiskeys for investing and from a position of strength that automatically diversifies you. And then we have cryptocurrency, where that is the speculative side of the grand scheme of things. You start with the oldest money, most protective hedging in gold and silver, and then you go all the way to the other side of the spectrum and speculatively, and you take a good educated guess and do your homework, and you want some money working for you that has a very high potential to make a lot of money, but it also comes with a lot of risk. Ask anybody that's in Bitcoin right now, because it just dumped, I don't know what it is, 30 or 40% of its value. And I see on all the social programs, everybody's in disarray and all this. And I heard all kinds of opinions. And I just sit back and I go, okay, one of my 8 assets didn't do so well last month. That's why I'm diversified. My gold's up, my silver's up, my strategic metals are up, diamonds are setting all-time records, rare whiskeys setting records. So to not only thrive and survive the next decade, you've got to be diversified. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if the currencies are going to crash. I don't know if the stock market's going to crash. I don't know if Bitcoin's going to crash. Understand the products that we sell are shock absorbers for these times, where, everybody else lost 40% of their net worth because most of the people I know that are in cryptocurrency, well, they're all in like fools. They're all in. They get greedy. They get to linear thinking and they see all this wealth, and it's called greed. The key to being rich, and the key to being even more so wealthy, is slow, prudent, well thought out products and assets that no matter what happens, you have a plan B. So while my crypto holdings reduced, just like I did a year ago, we sold a lot of our cryptocurrency. And what did we do? We diversified into strategic metals and the other assets. Well, we used cryptocurrency money to build this Atlas Forge platform and all the bells and whistles, and went and traveled the world and met all these people, because it's about diversification. And sometimes, there's these crypto crazies that you can't tell them anything. They're linear thinking and they only think about greed and money. And then when it plummets in value, it's like it's Bitcoin's fault. It's not. It's called greed. Same thing with these people that are in the stock market, experiencing all-time highs, all-time profits. But are they smart enough to take some money and take a little bit of the cream off the top and diversify, get into some other assets? No, they aren't. It's called greed. They think it's going to go higher and higher and higher. It doesn't work that way. The easiest first step is really to have savings beyond reach of your home government. And that is not only the government, that's for you personally as well. Atlas Forge, it's our plan to build out a network of attorneys, tax strategists who are knowledgeable about tax mitigation or reducing tax in every country in the world. So that no matter who's a subscriber to Atlas Forge, that we can help them become a global entity to help people not get caught in the trap. And that trap is of governments. Or if you're in the Western world, it's very easy to get lawsuits. There's frivolous lawsuits for everything under the sun. Now, there's reasons why we diversify. There's reasons why we, in the future, even though Nicole and I personally have, offshore locations, multiple bank accounts in multiple jurisdictions, and assets that are really managed through a trust. We hope to have that up and running next year, where as we build this out and we meet more vetted professionals in that field of tax mitigation, that you need to not only think about how much harm your government can do to you, but also how much your neighbor can do to you, because lawsuits are just rampant. And the more money that you make, or the higher your net worth goes, the bigger target you are, not only through the IRS or taxes, but your neighbor. It's called jealousy, and some people are very good at causing problems and starting lawsuits and these types of things. So you really need to protect yourself. I mean, all the way around. Know that capital controls, asset seizures, anything that you're seeing macroeconomically, all these flare-ups around the world, from India and the seizing of the 500 and the 1,000 rupee or whatever it's called, the Venezuela shutdown of the banks, the ATMs, Greece, Spain, Iceland. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. Governments can do this without warning. So you're the last person to know about it. If all your money's stuck in the stock market, for example, my aha moment came when I think I was at the largest mutual insurance company, and we sold everything. I don't care what it was. We could do annuities, life insurance, stocks, bonds, variable whole life, all kinds of nonsense. But when the crash started in 2008 and I had all my money in there, I couldn't get to it. I couldn't liquidate it. I didn't have any plan B. And that was really one of the very first days that I thought to myself, there's got to be a better, safer way that I can build trust, build my net worth, and diversify, where I'm not subject to one government's ideology or seizure laws. It's scary. So I learned a lot. I went from being a millionaire to broke to back to being a millionaire. So it can be done. It just takes a little training, a little time. So I would highly recommend that you just go in and get your subscription at Atlas Forge for the year. This is all we're going to talk about, is money and assets and what to do and how to do it in the proper way through a designed, vetted, recommended group of professionals, where we can all be on the same page, all collaborate, because we're much stronger as a group of subscribers. You might know a great tax mitigation lawyer in Latvia or Germany or Russia or wherever you are, that you can add a little value to the platform and help others in your area. But everything that we offer, everyone that we've met, we actually went there. We met the people. We went to the warehouses, to the vaults, to the supply. We checked it out, because to me, everything's about trust. And there's so much nonsense out there that you don't know who to trust, what to buy, when to buy it, what kind to buy, how much to buy, what's the allocation. And we'll get into all that stuff. But first steps right now, like always, take the basic easy steps. Have 3 months of cash sitting at home. Have some gold and silver bullion at home. And if you don't have either and you're looking at buying some, well, then right now, because of the gold silver ratio and about an hour's worth of compelling information I put out last week at Atlas Forge, you should be all over silver. It's the best value on the planet right now. That and rhenium, but that's a whole nother conversation. So any government can do it without warning. So it's very scary. There's nothing particularly American, Chinese, Russian, European about gold. Gold is what I call biblical. It's the oldest money in the world, and it's been around since millennial. So it's the easiest step. It's very easy to buy, and in certain areas of the world, it's very easy to liquidate. However, that's not the case in some Western worlds, specifically the United States. Because of the Coinage Act in, 1968, the Coinage Act really reduced the silver certificate, meaning you could go in with these silver certificates and actually get cash for them. Just like Nixon took the dollar backing off gold in 1971. And at that point in time, what was that? 34, almost 50 years ago, what we had as money in the world, it was true for the world, because everything was really paired to the dollar after the Second World War, and we won't get into that. But know that money actually had a tangible asset backing it, and that was gold. And in the certificates, it was silver. Well, quietly at night, and nobody really publicizes this, silver took the hit on the Coinage Act in 1968, and you couldn't redeem your silver certificates for cash. And then in 1971, because the United States reneged on its gold backing of the currency. It in essence stole gold from countries around the world in 1971. Nixon actually sold that the dollar was strong enough on its own volition, its own principles, that it didn't need to be backed by gold. Well, what really happened was they didn't have enough gold to pay out when people went to cash in these worthless dollars. And at that moment in 71, our money went from being a money to a currency, to a fiat currency, even worse, that has been manipulated ever since. And this all came about, a couple of really smart thieves got together, the central banks down off of South Carolina called Jekyll Island, where they built and formulated this plan of a Ponzi scheme, a 21st century Ponzi scheme that has lasted now for 105 years. And it looks like it's a government entity and all this nonsense where it's a private corporation owned by the elite of the world, and they manipulate the money around the world. And they're the same suspects, the billionaires of the world, the central banks of the world, the Fed, the IMF. Those are the elite of the world that control money and all kinds of dark things that we won't even get into. I'm telling you the facts as I know them about money. I'm not getting into any dark conspiracy theories and all that kind of nonsense. You need to step up, be proactive, and get yourself diversified as soon as possible, because you look around the world, highest price to earnings ratio in the stock markets. There's so much currency. The world's $300 trillion in debt. Last year was the lowest buying rate of citizens around the world. But what did increase was Big Brother, big corporations, ETFs, gold exchange, and it's depicted, and I didn't find one for 2017, but I know it beat the 2016 record. That trading volume on gold is at an all-time high. So what's happening, the stock market crashed, gold jumped, 5%. All these big institutional investors, these hedge fund managers, these, hoity-toity Wall Street guys, they see the writing on the wall. These people are not stupid. And every investor has a risk. And some of those thresholds of risks are being met, because now you're seeing large entities taking huge amounts of money and moving it into safe, secure gold, silver, strategic metals. The flight of capital out of paper assets into real property, whiskeys, diamonds, cryptocurrency, gold, silver, strategic metals, things that are tangible, things that are physical, things that you own, maintain, and control, are at an all-time high right now. So what do the rich know that you don't know? The crash is coming. Now, some of these guys, they've been running their mouths for decades saying, oh, the crash going to, oh, the crash. You know what? Right now, in this point in time, fiscally, macroeconomically, this is the height of fear that I've ever had. And I've been in finance for well over 35 years. I've done quite well. When everybody's buying, you should be selling. There's some great values out there. Right now, silver's a great value. Highly recommend silver. Strategic metals, again, great value, has great utility in the future, because the Internet of Things, 5G, and all things electronic are coming. You can also find those in the archives of Atlas Forge, where I break down supply and demand of the future of drones and solar powers and electric vehicles and cell phones and 5G. It's absolutely positively the greatest demand, and it'll be one of those innovations that change the world, and that's 5G. Okay, gold is universally valued. That's key, because what good is, some Chinese yuan if you're in Germany? You can't do anything with it. I mean, that's the problem with currencies. And at some point, I do believe that there will be one world currency, and I do believe it will be backed by gold. When governments around the world have printed their presses to extinction and they experience enough pain, and the billionaires of the world and the elite of the world finally experience enough pain, we'll get back to real money. But until then, it's going to be the same old, more rules, more regulation, more money printing, more manipulation, more BS. So what I'm saying the easiest, safest way to become a global entity, to protect yourself, your family, your kids, standard of living, get on board with some gold and silver bullion like yesterday. And right now, silver is the best value on the planet. Now, if you're one of those people, sometimes you are forced to acquire gold through a 401k or self-directed IRA because the rules within those financial vehicles dictate that you must have a government issued American Eagle, for example. Now, in that case and only that case, I could see where you would have a government issued coin, because I don't believe in the 21st century that a government could get away with gold seizure in the United States. I think there'd be riots in the streets if they tried to do that. So this is the 21st century, and this isn't 1930. So things have changed a lot. So lessen your political risk, lessen your risk to this debt that's going to really impede everybody. Think of gold and silver as freedom insurance. So somehow, some way, your home government will keep squeezing the pocketbook. And you're seeing it all around. Rules, regulation, capital controls, people controls, limits on ATMs, flat out manipulation. And we're seeing that, right now in the gold and silver market. Silver, in my opinion, I look at the shorts by JP Morgan Chase. They've been the largest bank in the world would be shorting silver is beyond my wildest imagination. I can't see any reason why a central bank would short silver unless, and they have like 600 million ounces of it, they're trying to monopolize and corner the silver market. Just like I know the gold market is manipulated. If you follow the markets like I do and you see these things day in and day out, the numbers just do not make sense. Whether it's the first look when I hit the Shanghai or to the S&P, somewhere between that dark period of night where the exchanges are closed, money seems to come and go like the thief in the night. And, it's not something me just being a regular old guy can prove, but I can look at the effects and I can look at the results to know that something's not right. So sooner or later, financial institutions, the central banks and the governments and the elite of the world are going to have to come clean. When and how that happens, I don't know yet, but I'm assuming if hundreds of years of experience and reading about what they do, I would imagine it will be a controlled devaluation where the brunt of the losses comes from the middle class, you and I, and a way for them to still control the money, make a profit, but yet get back to real money. And that's something that's called SDRs, special drawing rights. People always ask me, well, Andy, what happens if the US dollar goes bankrupt? And it's a valid question. And my response is this: if the US dollar goes bankrupt, so goes the world. So who has the power? Who has the resources to come in and dictate a one world currency? And the answer to that is the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, where they have baskets, and these baskets are filled with gold of all of our favorite little players in the manipulation of monetary vehicles. And it's all the major players: China, Russia, United States, Germany, the top, Japan, those are the top 5 or 6 GDPs in the world. So SDRs work like this. They're special drawing rights. The IMF has special powers to, if the world would cataclysmically end the current financial system, it has the ability and the gold backing to present a one world currency. And that's quite possible in the next 10 years. So having an interest in gold to cover all of the financial vehicles, all of the debt, all the derivatives, the securities, the toxic loans, the central banks, the monetary velocity that's moved on a daily basis known as cash, that would put gold somewhere between $10,000 to $15,000 per ounce. Now, and that would be at about approximately a 40% backing, because once this fiat system, this fake money that we're using, collapses this time, Why, of course, we've become interconnected through the internet and social media. It's very easy to transfer ideas and thoughts, and for good and bad. So we can call these people out. And I think the next currency, don't know when it's going to happen. I know it will happen because $300 trillion worldwide is not sustainable. And as interest rates start to go up, that debt will compound quickly. 5% median interest rate equals $15 trillion of new debt the world absorbs. And at some point, and we're there now, it's insolvent, it's indolent, it's bankrupt. It's no longer. It's a Ponzi scheme. And sooner or later, I don't know what's going to cause the crash, whether it's the highest credit card debt of about $13 trillion, personal debt, credit card debt, student loan debt, government debt, state, local debt, pension debt. It's all going to come unraveled. Don't know when, but I know it will. I'll see it in my lifetime for sure. And then it'll be very interesting because I think gold and silver will skyrocket. But what you need to look at also is what happens when something is terminally declining. Where does the money escape to? And if you follow the money, you'll follow the profits. And that's a key to investing outside of, investing in things that people are habitual to. Will the money go to gold and silver? Will it go to strategic metals? Will it go to cryptocurrency? Well, you're already seeing it. It's going into cryptocurrency. It's going into gold and silver. Rare color diamonds are at an all-time high, all-time volume. Same thing with whiskeys. And then here just recently, within the last 2 months, Nicole and I became the only licensed wholesaler of an ISO 9001 strategic metals that are rarer than silver and gold. But for them to move up in value or to have a great appreciable return, the stock market doesn't have to crash. So you're starting to see the flight of savvy investors around the world that are starting to put their money in these sound generational assets that have been proven. Look at rare color diamonds. And then typically in rare color diamonds, in most places around the world, there is no capital control. There is no capital gains. There is no taxation. There is no declaration. So you need to be wise. You need to be educated. And that's what we do at Atlas Forge. So I hope the year you're on your yearly subscription and you can sit with us every week and enjoy the webinars, the podcast, the information, the products, because that's why we did it, to help people. So fortunately, you don't need to be hostage to a desperate and out of control government. International diversification, it's time-tested route to freedom. Because if you're financially free, you can do a lot of things when you have money. And you can overcome a lot of challenges if you have money. If you don't have any money, it makes it much more difficult. Now, is money be all end all? Absolutely not. But I'm saying, yes, it is the most important thing. I mean, if you want to provide for yourself, your family, your wife, your standard of living, unfortunately, the world we live in, these are steps it's mandatory. You'd be a fool not to. Look around, open your eyes. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. That's how dangerous it is. And about every financial market that I see. So buying gold is an important first step. And I hope that me speaking today will help transform your thinking into there's a lot of danger out there, guys. And I don't like to sell fear. This is prudent, sound advice. Nothing could happen for another decade, even though I don't believe that. It could. I mean, we've been doing it for the last 10 years, 15 years. We're printing money, picking it off the trees like it's going out of style, and it's completely worthless. So with that said, we'll leave the note on a high note and wish everybody health and wealth and wisdom. Take a proactive look at what we're doing here at Atlas Forge and engage in our culture, because what we put out just might save your financial life. So with that said, have a great day and stay positive. There is a way out. This is Andy Morbitzer, CEO, Atlas Forge.